Disappointed?
No, because I think our bus discussions with him.
Is it though, do you think, a matter of importance to the UK that we have a close relationship with him and he feels comfortable about coming?
Well, we shouldn't say the relationship with the USA depends on who the president is and what the relationship is with the president. It's a relationship with the whole country of several hundred million people.
You accept that it's an important relationship?
Of course it's an important relationship.
The most important relationship that Britain has with another country?
No, I think there are many important relationships. The US one is obviously culturally and economically significant and important. Also, the trading relationships we have around the world with obviously the EU, but also with India and China and the rest of the world are very important. And but also, if I may say so, our relationship with international institutions such as the United Nations is very important. And the biggest disappointment of Donald Trump is, apart from his endless offensive remarks about women, about minorities and about different faiths, is his failure to support international institutions like the United Nations and like UNESCO.
But this issue of the so-called special relationship, so many prime ministers have set great store on our relationship with America being different, closer than our relationships with other countries. As Prime Minister, it doesn't sound as though you really believe in the special relationship. If were you to become Prime Minister,
I would want us to have good relations with the USA, as we want good relations with the rest of the world, and of course visit the United States. Of course, meet whoever the president is at that time.
And with America than with France, Germany, Russia, China, Japan. More important.
Relations that bring about peace and justice around the world are absolutely crucial. A relationship with the USA and influence on the USA is obviously important because it is such a huge military and economic power around the world.
But obviously you don't really believe in the special relationship.
Well, look, I'm not sure that anyone has succeeded in defining the special relationship. I got asked about the special relationship, and I was told once by a former Prime Minister, I won't name the person, that if they specify what the special relationship was, it wouldn't be a special relationship.
Boris Johnson accused you of damaging that vital economic and diplomatic relationship with the US.
Well, in line with so many other ill-thought-out, ignorant, ill-considered comments by Boris Johnson, that goes on the same shelf.
Now, Brexit is going to dominate this year as it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
SNP Nicola Sturgeon this morning on the BBC has urged you again to sign up for Britain remaining in the single market. You're refusing to do that. Why are you?
Well, the single market is dependent on membership of the European Union. Do we have a trading relationship with Europe which is tariff-free, which is based on access to that market and access of Europe to our market? Yes. Do we push for that in the negotiations? Yes. Is that what we've said to the European Union in opposition? Yes. So I don't quite understand why she would keep saying join the single market when leaving the EU means you leave the single market. You have to make a special relationship with the European Union.
Well, hang on a second. Britain could join the European Free Trading Area, like Norway, and if we joined EFTA, like Norway, we would rejoin the European single market.
You could, although we are a very different economy to Norway or Turkey that have differing degrees of access. Surely what it's about is making sure that our manufacturing industry and our service industries can continue to trade with Europe and of course vice versa. But there are also aspects of the single market one wants to think about, such as the restrictions on state aid to industry, which is something that I would wish to challenge.
No, but hang on a second. John McDonnell has done a review of whether you would be significantly restricted in your economic policy if you remained in the single market, including on issues like state aid, and he's concluded that you wouldn't be.
He has concluded we wouldn't be, and he's correct in that on the terms of our manifesto, but I think as a point of principle that the right of a government to intervene on industries is an important one, and at the moment governments intervene in different levels. France and Germany frequently do.
They do.
Other countries feel nervous about it, and there are questions of EU law. I think these things should be clarified in our relationship before we enter into a special trading relationship with Europe.
All the polls show that an overwhelming majority of Labour supporters would like the UK to remain in the European single market. The polling, for example, most authoritative sort of survey, British Elections Survey, which looked at why people voted Labour in the last election, said it was because they thought Labour would have a closer relationship with the European Union. Surely, therefore, it's rational for you, if not today, but soon, to say, well, like Nicola Sturgeon, Britain should remain in the European single market.
It's rational to accept the result of the referendum. It's rational to understand the need for a close trading relationship with Europe, and that we will have and that we will do. I think we're in the right direction on that. Yes, of course I understand the views of Labour Party members and of Labour supporters, but as a country...
But you're not ruling out this morning that you might end up in the position of being in favour of EFTA, for example.
We want to make sure there's tariff-free trade with Europe, that we protect manufacturing industry and jobs, university relationship with Europe, which is a crucial one because it does so much on research, and of course service trading with Europe. And that's the basis on which we've spoken to the European Union and to many other governments and fellow socialist parties across Europe. But there has to be an agenda here, which is an agenda about a continent that opposes austerity, that does do something about growing levels of inequality and doesn't accept a free market solution to all our problems, because there isn't a free market solution.
Well, many, as you say, European countries, members of the EU, members of the Eurozone, don't adopt what people might describe as a sort of freewheeling, free market approach. So plainly, the two things are consistent, as it were, membership of the EU and a more interventionist approach. But can I just bring you on to what Andrew Adonis was talking about just now, which is MPs have now secured the right to a vote on the terms of whatever the Prime Minister finally negotiates for Brexit. He believes those terms should be put to the British people in a second referendum. Well, is he right about that?
Before that, we've got the vote coming up this week on the EU withdrawal bill. We've set down our lines on that, which are about democratic accountability, are about protection of workers' environment and consumer rights, and are about human rights across Europe, such as the Charter of Fundamental Rights as well as the European Court of Human Rights. If our tests are not met by the government, then we will vote against the bill.
But you're not going to win on those votes simply because it's quite clear that because the Tory rebels are going to be loyal up until it goes to Lords. I think
they told you that.
I think you can assume that that's a working assumption you should make. But on the question of what happens later in the year, there is a case, isn't there, for a referendum on the terms of Brexit?
We are not supporting or calling for a second referendum. What we've called, what we've called for is a meaningful vote in Parliament, and that is the one area that I think Parliament has asserted itself just in the vote before Christmas.
We're going to go to the break in a second, but I just want to point out to you that when you are talking very much in the present tense at the moment, you're saying we are not supporting a second referendum. You're not saying we would never support a second referendum.
We're not calling for one either.
Okay. You're not calling for one now, apparently. Anyway, don't go away. We've got more from Labour's leader, Jeremy Corbyn, in just a couple of seconds. Welcome back to Peston on Sunday. Conference voted, Jeremy lost, you're still here. Now, I'm going to pick up very quickly just the last sort of Brexit question. Customs Union, the world seems to expect that Labour is going to shift to a position of being in favour of remaining in the Customs Union, is that right?
There will have to be a Customs Union with the European Union, obviously, because if you're in the trading relationship, then clearly you can't at the same time be putting tariffs on goods within the European Union, but also...
But this idea of not having border checks, that's manufacturers would love us to remain in the customs union.
I'm saying there would have to be a customs union with the EU. I also I think there also needs to be a look at some aspects of the current customs union and the way in which it actually is tariff heavy against quite a lot of very poor countries, and it is in some cases protectionist against developing countries. I think there are areas there that we need to look at.
You push for reform in those areas.
Absolutely.
But you would, be
absolutely,
quite happy not to have a sort of Liam Fox character in your government, in the sense that you don't want the right to negotiate bilateral trade deals with the rest of the world.
And you'll be really shocked here. I've no plans to appoint Liam Fox to any position in a Labour government. No plans whatsoever.
No, that wasn't quite the question I was asking. It was an issue about whether or not it matters to a future Labour government the ability to negotiate bilateral trade deals with the likes of China and America, which you wouldn't have if you remained in the customs union.
Those bilateral trade arrangements are important because the areas that I would want to look at are environmental protection, are human rights standards, are the conditions under which workers manufacture goods. Now, the EU has varying degrees of special trade arrangements with different countries. They very seldom enforce the human rights clauses in it, and they very seldom enforce the environmental clauses either. Listen, if we want to live on a cleaner, safer planet, trade is part, not the only thing, but part of the way of achieving that.
You'd be happy,
so let's not just put it as a blanket.
Happy to influence that through the customs union, not
through a customs union.
Through a customs. All right. I'm not sure I can't completely understand, but we've got to press on. The Tory chairman today announced, actually on the MAR programme on the other side, that they would be asking all their candidates in the local elections to sign up to I think he called it a respect pledge, which would mean that their candidates would promise not to use any kind of abusive language when campaigning, or in fact ever, I think, in politics. He says, would Labour be prepared to force your candidates to make the same kind of pledge?
It's a basic in the Labour Party. You treat people with respect and treat each other with respect. I don't do personal abuse of anybody, and I don't expect anybody else to do it towards any of our candidates or anyone else.
But you won't do anything special?
Well, we're quite clear. Public behaviour is about respect, is about listening to people, is about how you treat each other. Surely that should be a norm in public life. I probably receive a disproportionate amount of personal abuse. As you know, I don't reply to it. I get on with it, treating people with respect.
I don't want to labour this point, and we'll keep it quick. As you will remember, your colleague John McDonnell did say on my programme here that it was okay to describe Esther McVey as a stain of humanity because he was expressing his natural anger. That's not a sort of phrase that I've ever heard you use.
No,
is it a sort of phrase that politicians should use?
I would rather stick to where I disagree with somebody on their policies. I fundamentally disagree with Esther McVey and her approach towards inequality and the poor and the worst off within our society, and I will stick to that.
Your colleague, Angela Rayner, described your economic policy as, it's a word I can't really use on television, a rude word, or bust. It's a word that means poo or bust.
I think the rest of us can work it out.
What did she mean by that?
What she's saying was that we're going to have an investment-led economy. It's going to be a big call, and this country needs a big call. We need to invest in schools, in hospitals, in housing, in railways, in roads. And she was saying...
She seems to be conceding, though, that there's a high risk in your taxing, spending, borrowing approach.
Well, she said it's a dramatic one, and it's the way she put it to me. And dramatic it will be, because for the first time, for quite a while, you'll have a government that says, actually, the cause of this country, our national cause, has to be ending homelessness, ending child poverty, ending inequality, having a health service that functions at all levels, and a social care service and that young people, all young people, get a chance of an apprenticeship or a university.
Very quickly, we're almost out of time. Chris Williamson made a point that most people would agree with, that, if you want to fund public services properly, you've got to tax those with more wealth, more expensive houses, for example, a bit more. You disagree with that?
What Chris was saying was that you deal with the issue of the cuts made to council expenditure by central government by raising local tax in order to pay off the problem.
And charging those with the most expensive properties. But that's a perfectly rational point that your former
there are some flaws in the position. One is roughly 20% of council income comes from local tax, 80% comes from central government. The poorest Labour-held councils in the country have had the biggest cuts. You cannot meet the gap by just raising local council tax. It's got to be funded centrally. And this government has cynically removed expenditure, removed possibilities from Labour-controlled inner-city local authorities that are dealing with the worst social problems in this country. So my pressure is on the government, pay up properly to support our local councils.
But you're not actually sort of rejecting the idea of some kind of wealth tax.
Chris has put the view forward that you could do it through a local property tax. I'm more interested in national taxation and in driving down tax havens, tax avoidance and tax evasion.
Delightful to see you this morning. We haven't had a chance to talk about whether Alexis should go, as he appears to be going from the Arsenal.
What a wonderful player. But we look forward to the game with Bournemouth later on.
Fingers crossed we get the right result. Anyway, lovely to see you. My thanks to Jeremy Corbyn. Let's pick up on